Chris.
No pressure.
Sorry?
No pressure.
No pressure at all. Do you want your pink standing back?
I do.
Stand up and
Weird.
You're not meant to say that.
Alright, get on my mat.
Great start.
I know, right? We're so professional. Hi everyone, we're Damian and Larene. And we are talking about entering. Hang on, I just got to show you this ready. Oh, it doesn't work.
Oh, you left your computer.
Broken.
That's really awkward.
That's really awkward.
So who is new tonight?
Me, clearly.
Yes. Who else is new? Awesome. Julian,
There
you've
we
never
go.
been. Wonderful.
I've never been to this.
Wow.
Oh boy. Can we edit that bit out?
All
Are
right.
you controlling the slides? Is this what's happening?
Apparently. That probably shouldn't.
Hi everyone. I think most of you know me. I've been organising this thing for a little while, and yeah, you've probably seen me laying out the chairs and putting them away again. That's my job. And but I'm actually a software engineer. Surprise, surprise. And I'm working with a little company called Oztix at the moment. Where's Andy? Hey, there he is. Oztix is a ticketing and venuing company. They manage events. It's awesome. I love it there. But my first real tech job was at a little company. You might have heard of it called ThoughtWorks. I started there as a grad and spent 3 years there before moving on to new things. So I'm passionate about accessibility, diversity, inclusion, all that jazz. And I love the tech community, I love pizza, and I'm also the long-running organiser of Women Who Code. Yeah, so that's me.
Cool. So I'm Damian. I had the horrible realisation this year that this is my 20th year in the software industry. I'm feeling very much the sort of old grumpy man. That's sort of, feeling very much the old man. Chris will make me feel better. You opened yourself up for that. I'm basically self-taught. I got into the industry sort of around the sort of like .com boom in 99, 2000 when everybody wanted a website. If you could spell HTML, you had a job. So I basically got in at the right time and self-taught. I've been a software dev, I've been an architect, I've been the CTO of a couple of startups, done lots of consulting, rescued a lot of projects, and currently sort of heading out on my own as a consultant CTO, sort of doing the sorts of things that a CTO might do for a company that is in need of one. So software architecture and engineering practices, and I'm a DevOps today, and training. So that's sort of who we are. So our journey.
Yes, so as I mentioned, I started off kind of as a consultant at ThoughtWorks, and I spent a lot of time on consulting in soft skills and learned a lot, spent 3 years there. And then I ran away to join a startup. And this is a little bit like how it went. So one day, actually Damian and I ride bikes together. If we haven't told you, if you've met our chances, we've talked to you about cycling or at you about cycling. And one day Damian asked me out for coffee, and I was like, yes, I'm going to get Damian to join ThoughtWorks. It's going to be awesome. And instead, he told me about the startup that he was working at. And I'd spent it was a jobs board for women, and I'd spent most of my time at ThoughtWorks helping women get jobs in tech. It was something I was really passionate about, and also people at ThoughtWorks told me to go and work with Damian, don't miss that opportunity. I'll learn lots and lots, and both of those things are true. And also working at a product company is really, really handy. You learn lots of stuff there. So, yeah, that kind of happened. And after I joined said $ startup, we're both not there anymore, a whole series of events happened. So we shipped, straight away as soon as I got there, end of March last year, we shipped a product in 3 weeks. We shipped a website in 3 weeks. to tell the investors we had a website, and it was a minimum viable product, MVP. It was working pretty well. But how we did that was we split the work up into front end for myself and back end and DevOps for Damian. And
I'm being trolled at this point.
AWS, you can do that. That was a really, really interesting experience for joining the startup and really diving into the deep end straight away. So after that stress was over, we started to establish weekly one-on-ones, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to just end up doing the stuff that I was more comfortable with and good at, the front-end stuff. So in those one-on-ones, we talked about deliberately splitting the work so that I would make sure that I would pick up a whole range of cars, different parts of the stack, and even though I would be slower, I'd learn more and get faster in the long run. We'd get faster in the long run. And then so I moved on to being a full stack dev. We call it a full snack dev, and ship features end to end comfortably by myself. That's kind of how that story went and how our professional journey started together.
Cool. So what we can share, through that process of sort of doing that and getting to know each other in this fairly chaotic environment, we both learned a bunch, and because we were talking a lot and having one-on-ones, we learned a lot, and that's where this talking came from. So some of the things we can share. Am I doing this?
You're going to do your own speech.
Oh, that's right. With mentoring. So basically, some of the things we've learned, or that I've learned about mentoring and how to be a better mentor of people.
And I'm going to talk about one of the most important aspects of when you are setting up a mentoring relationship is setting expectations and sticking to them.
I'm going to touch on men mentoring women a little bit, which is a little bit contentious, or can be, but we're just going to talk about that very briefly. And I'm going to talk about being a sponsor, which I'll get into a bunch of detail about.
And I'm going to go into a bit of depth about feedback, something I'm really, really passionate about, and open communication.
And how to do good one-on-ones. So, words are hard. And when we were writing this, we were sort of like struggling to figure out the words. It was like mentor or mentee, and at one point we talked about the senior person. I'm like, oh God, that will kill me. So mentor, mentee, boss, whatever, junior, senior. We sort of grew minion. We'll probably we sort of use them fairly interchangeably. We'll probably mess them up and giggle because I'm very juvenile.
And even though the talk of this title is centered around mentoring, a lot of these concepts actually do apply to managing it and being a good boss as well.
So, good mentoring. So, a productive, what are you doing?
Nothing.
So a productive mentoring relationship is sort of like any other type of relationship. It takes a bunch of work. You both need to want to make it work, and you both need to be prepared to put that work in. And that work can't be one-sided. If you've got one person doing everything and another one just sitting and going whatever, it's not going to work. So you do need to have really good open communication. And I think Larene's going to cover a lot more of that in detail later in the talk. But where the two-way street thing comes in, it is really rewarding, ideally for both people. So obviously, if you are being mentored by somebody that has a lot more experience, you've got a lot to learn. But done right, that's definitely a two-way street. So I found that some of the mentoring relationships I've had have been something that I've gained a lot from, where that match has been good, and we've both got something for it. So particularly, I just killed. No. Google Slides is really weird. So I found that working with younger people or people earlier in their career, I get really motivated by the energy that they bring. It's very easy to get stuck in a bit of a rut, and I see that as a consultant moving around, and I see people that are, sort of been in the same job for 10 or 15 years, and they're like, oh, no, I don't want to learn anything else. I've learned all the things I'm going to learn. And it's really easy to get stuck in that rut. And I found that when I do, take on sort of mentoring type relationships, it's forced me to push myself, sort of bring my A game into that as well. So it sort of keeps me sharp and keeps me on top of stuff and wanting to learn new things. So it really is something that, as a more senior person in the industry, you can really benefit from. And I've also found, and I think this is fairly well studied and acknowledged, that the act of teaching something forces you to explain it, or forces you to understand it a lot better, so you get a better grasp of the concepts. And I learned that a long, long time ago, before I got into software, when I just finished my music degree, is that I started teaching guitar, and I would do something, and someone said, "What are you doing there?" And it forced me to go, "I've got no idea." And so I was forced to sort of stop what I was doing and analyse it, break it down and understand it and be able to teach it. And in doing that, learned a lot more about myself and how I was playing the guitar. So definitely having to explain something forces you to understand it better. And the same things happen with software. There's things that as experienced developers, you have patterns and techniques and syntax and shortcut keys and stuff that you just take for granted. And having somebody go, "What was that thing you just did?" You go, "Oh, actually I do this because of blah, 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 and blah." And having to explain it forces you to have a deeper understanding of it. So you definitely get a benefit from mentoring people, and you sort of get that, that learning. So some other things that I've learned about being a better mentor. One is it should be challenging. So you need to push people out of their comfort zone a little bit. So you grow outside of your comfort zone. If you never do anything that's sort of hard or awkward, you're just going to stay exactly where you are. So as a mentor, I'll try to find something that people are a little bit scared to try, and push them to do it. And sometimes, depending on the person and the relationship, sometimes that's just a cheerleader. I know you can do this. Sometimes it might be a little bit of friendly berating. Bullying, was it, Jamie? But finding what will motivate people to challenge themselves, and then holding them to it, will result in them growing a lot. Some backstory there for that little joke. When Jamie,
she's a conference speaker now.
When Jamie joined us, she's like, "Yep, that all sounds great. I'm not going to do any public speaking ever." And I'm like, "Challenge accepted." The highlight standout talk of DDD Brisbane last year. And I was sitting with Jamie earlier in this week. She's like, "So I've got this great idea for a talk." And I'm just like, "I am so proud of you." So yeah, and as a result, the people grow if you sort of push them. And and it does. You need to find the thing that will motivate them a little bit. Even if that is friendly bullying. But when you do it, you need to set specific tasks and specific deadlines. So don't say, "Hey, you should go and learn this thing." It needs to be a lot more actionable and time frame driven. So something like, "Look, we're going to come back here in 2 weeks' time, and I want you to have deployed an application on Kubernetes and show me how to do it." And that's where the two-way street comes in as well. Is that's a great way for me to learn some details about that task. So I've got somebody that's going to show me how to do something in Kubernetes. So obviously it can't be completely selfish. It has to benefit them more. But you can say, "Hey, look, learn that thing and teach it back to me," and I can kind of use that. I guess in an academic type environment, that's you might have people that work under you as a professor and go and do some research and bring it back in. So you can kind of collaborate on that learning as well. So, a couple of other principles. Give people enough rope. So, let people make some mistakes for themselves. And there's no benefit for just giving people every answer. You don't actually grow from that. So you need to, a good mentor will let people learn some of those lessons for themselves rather than just, handing it to them. So there's a great saying by Emerson, which is, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So in your life, you need to exercise some bad judgment and learn for it. But as a mentor, you don't want to replace that school of hard knocks entirely, but you can save people a bunch of time and heartache and pain and whatever else. So somebody says, "Oh, I want to do blah 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 blah," and that's not going to work. Then you might want to let them try, but put some constraints on it, or put a time box on it, or say, "Hey, look, take a day. Sure, give Swagger a try. Take a day on it, then come back and we'll talk about it."
That may or may not have been.
It may or may not be a real conversation. because as somebody that's been in the industry a long time, because the industry is so cyclic, you have that spidey sense. So like I know, like something will come along and I'll go, that's not going to work because it didn't work 10 years ago, and then it didn't work 5 years ago, and it's not going to work today. But if people are super excited about it, go, yeah, cool, go spend some time on it. But just look out for this. You can kind of give people the guardrails, but you don't want to hand it to them entirely.
Swagger's coming, by the way, Andy.
See, I'm old enough to remember code-generated data layers. And wisdom. And doorways. Which brings me on to career pathways. So if you are mentoring somebody that does report to you, and that's really common that you sort of might be managing somebody and their mentor, I think you need to be looking longer range than right now in kind of setting those goals and direction. So I tend to think about, look, what would your next job be like? Like let's do today what you might need in your next job, and then create opportunities to use those skills. So you're not going to lose anything as a manager by stretching people and setting them up for that next role. You'll probably get rewarded with loyalty, like, wow, I'm learning so much here, I'm going to stay. Whereas if you limit people, and I've seen this, people that are limited, like they want to stretch out and do things that aren't in their today's job, but you've got a management structure that says, no, you only need to do this, you're only allowed to do this, and that creates a whole bunch of resentment. But even if they do leave, people, jobs come and go, and that's the thing, like, a bunch of us work together and went, this is great, and through circumstances, we're not working together anymore, jobs do come and go no matter how good they seem at the time, but you'll never forget the people that taught you and helped you along the way. So if you are a mentor, don't constrain people to whatever box you need them to be in now. Pairing is a great thing. If you are both devs, I feel like pair programming on something, on a new pattern or a new technique or some tricky architecture or whatever, is an amazing tool. If you've got a good,
So you guys were remote. How did that work?
Remote pairing works. So yeah, totally. I mean, we would also get together, but pairing over something like Zoom is really good. VS Code has a shared coding session thing that works. Just magic. It's amazing.
We ditched that.
We didn't use it a lot, but it is cool. But we used to use Zoom a lot.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and I found that if I was teaching something, even if I was doing most of the coding and the talking, which is not strictly what pair programming is about, but it gave an opportunity to kind of show the process of how I work through something, not just the end result. So it's all well and good to go, here's this code I wrote, go read it and learn from it. Well, no, it's not really all well and good, that's a bit useless. But if you have somebody kind of looking over your shoulder about how you go through that process, it's kind of, like the equivalent of in maths, you have to show you working. And you basically, like, by taking somebody through that process, it demystifies it. Looking at a problem alongside somebody is a lot more, and sort of sharing that context and experience is a lot more beneficial than somebody coming to you with, I had this problem last week, and you've got none of the context to talk about it. So lastly, pairing with something allows you to demonstrate some vulnerability. So working with the most junior member of our team, I found really interesting because I would do stuff, and I realised that when you have a lot of experience as a developer, like we all know this if we're experienced, we still fumble on stuff. We still Google stuff all day long. Who doesn't have 10 Stack Overflow tabs open today? We change our mind, we write terrible things and then go back and clean them up once we've figured out the shape of the problem. Like, that's stuff that we just do. And I had this realization that, really junior developers kind of thinks that by the time you've been around for a while and you're a senior, you just kind of go in this coding trance and, the code flows out of your fingers like it's a hacker movie. And the only one that's been around for a little while knows that that's just not true. It's just what you get better at is iterating over the problem and kind of cleaning up after yourself. Whereas, earlier on, you kind of sit there going, nah, I don't know the code to run, so I'm not going to do it. So by kind of letting go of some ego and demonstrating that, look, I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm just faster at figuring it out. Was gave a lot of benefit, a lot of confidence to go, you know what, we all suck a lot of the time. Is this you?
This is
Your turn.
So setting boundaries. Sorry, setting expectations. Wrong part of the slide. Mentoring relationship starts with someone kind of working with someone else, admiring that person, admiring their career path or their experience, and then working up the courage to ask, oh, can you be my mentor? And that's kind of how it happens, right? And because we're all generally nice people and we want to help, we're very likely to say, yes, sure, I'll help you, I'd love to be your mentor. However, when goals and timeframes are not established properly, from the very beginning, these relationships actually have a high risk of not being useful and tends to leave both people feeling a bit guilty if it doesn't work out and not really sure how to end it. It's a bit awkward. So the first one, setting goals. Very short one, but it does sound obvious. But goal setting and realistic goal setting, more importantly, for example, wanting to learn about microservices and Kubernetes, is incredibly important to do first with your mentor and your mentee, or as a mentee. You both need to ask yourselves, what do we want to achieve in this relationship together? And then compare, and mainly asking what does the mentee want to learn and achieve, and then comparing to the mentor's skills and background and what they have to offer. And secondly, setting timeframes. So in some mentoring relationships, depending on the commitment, can take up a lot of time, and if it's a successful relationship and ongoing, it's useful for both people, it can last a long time, maybe even a lifetime, and that's great. However, many relationships are finite. As we move through our careers, things change, our needs and wants change, and so it's a good idea to find a different mentor for when we want to learn new things. And so some mentoring relationships should end at some point, when both people are no longer gaining what they need out of it. So I've struggled early in my career to break up with my mentors because we made the mistake that expectations hadn't been set. Setting time frames and keeping communication open with an easy way out will avoid those kind of awkward conversations where the relationship just dies because you don't contact each other anymore. That feeling of guilt of like, oh, I should probably catch up with them, but I don't need to. And it kind of leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth for what a proper mentor or mentee relationship should look like. So you kind of don't go and chase it after that. And one technique for setting timeframes is to have and set up regular dates to check in, to see if it's still working for both people. And setting dates to review how things are going, and deciding whether you want to keep going as is, maybe meet up a little bit less, or walk away completely with no hard feelings. That's okay. And if you are already in a mentee-mentor kind of relationship, don't be afraid to sit down and reevaluate how things are going and set those goals and set that time frame. Now, it could be really, really beneficial. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was setting boundaries. So as mentioned before, a lot of people want to be helpful and want to say, yes, I want to help. And so a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of us, I certainly do struggle to say no to every opportunity or request for help that comes our way. And so lately I've watched and listened to a lot of Brené Brown. Who knows Brené Brown? All the women, yes! That was amazing. Brené Brown wrote a book you might have seen on bookshelves in the bestsellers, Dare to Lead. Has anyone seen Dare to Lead on the bookshelves? All the women and one guy. All right. She's on TED. She just did a Netflix special. Amazing. Please watch her. She is a social worker who has spent 20 years studying courage, and has found in her research that the most generous and wholehearted people each have, the commonality is that they have a strong set of boundaries. They've got a list of things that they've decided that they're okay and want to do, and that they're not okay to do. And setting boundaries, she found, is also one of the most difficult things for humans to do. And in terms of mentoring, sometimes it is more compassionate to say no if it's not a good match. And choosing discomfort now over resentment later, or guilt, or a bad feeling later. That's something I think is really important. Okay.
All right. I'm going to touch on the sort of topic of men mentoring women just a little bit. But basically, I need to reiterate that, you know, if you are entering some sort of mentoring relationship, that make sure you're doing it for, you know, for good reasons, and you've got something to offer, and, you know, and those expectations, you know, are really, really clear. Because you don't want to say, hey, look, I want to help women, but not sort of have, you know, a good match up where those expectations match. But essentially, men mentoring women shouldn't really be any different from men mentoring women, or men mentoring men, or anyone else mentoring anybody else. There are some specific things that Larene's going to talk about that you should be aware of, particularly around feedback, but I'm basically going to leave it there. But what I do want to talk about is something called sponsorship. And what I'm about to talk about here sort of does apply equally for men and women, but I want to talk about more in the context of men helping women. Because a lot of men genuinely do want to help, you know, particularly at the moment. There's, you know, there's big things like, look, there's a problem in our industry, and our industry is actually one of the better ones, but there is a problem, and, you know, there are a lot of us that do want to help. So they put the offering, put an offer out there of mentoring, and that's great. But often what's really needed is something called sponsorship. So what's that? Because they do often get confused a little bit. So basically, sponsorship is the introductions and the recommendations. It's the, hey, you should talk to my mate Dave, he knows all sorts of stuff about that. And every guy has a mate named Dave, by the way. And in Brisbane we also have, he went to school with my brother Dave. You went to school with someone's brother Dave, didn't you? And that's code for, hey, he's perfect for the job, you should hire him. But sponsorship is introducing people in your, you know, people to other people in your network and endorsing them. You know, it's hearing about an opportunity and realizing that someone else you know is probably a really good fit for that opportunity, and putting them together. You know, doing an introduction email, or introducing them at an event, or just, you know, reaching out on behalf of somebody. And men sponsor men all the time, and we kind of don't really notice it because we do introduce our friend Dave a lot of the time. And it's really natural. But men sponsoring women is actually a really, really powerful thing, but it is slightly awkward because it is less natural. And I don't know whether that's, you know, our own unconscious bias, or whether it's just hard to play the, hey, here's my mate Larene. It just doesn't sound right, I don't know.
It doesn't.
But, sorry?
I'm Dave now.
No. But I definitely see it done a whole lot less, and I don't really know what, you know, why that is, but anecdata. But the reason it's so powerful and it's such a good thing you can do is that endorsement really is such a helpful shortcut for people. So, you know, not only do you connect people to an opportunity or somebody that they might know that they might not have otherwise run into, but you can establish some credibility from the get-go. And this is where it's powerful, is women typically have to work that much harder to establish a foothold and that credibility, you know, in a workplace or outside of that. You sort of, you know, it seems that women always have to do a whole lot more to reach the level of credibility that I can walk in with as a guy and just have.
Because you're senior.
Sorry? Because I'm senior? Well, yeah, but I wasn't always. So, you know, that's something that I can do as a man. I can use some of that social capital that I have, and it costs me nothing. It costs me absolutely zero to have this conversation. And so I found myself doing, you know, being a lot more deliberate about that over the last couple of years. And not only has it cost me nothing, but it's benefited a whole bunch. And it does come back. You know, karma's a wonderful thing. And, you know, a lot of the relationships that have developed over me introducing people have, you know, sort of grown up, and the relationships that I've built over that have, you know, come back. So it is a really, really good you know, two-way rewarding thing. You know, everyone wins from that. Yeah, even in this room, you know, I see a whole bunch of people that, you know, and a group of people that have gotten to know each other and become friends. Really, a lot of it as the result of like Larene and I just introducing our own networks to each other. So, super powerful thing. And if you're a guy kind of going, hey, what can I do to help women in the industry? This conversation is, you know, an amazingly powerful thing. And writing those introduction emails is super awkward, but worth gold. Over to you.
All right.
Big one.
I almost sat down for yours. So I've rewritten a little bit of this, and I wanted to phrase it right and be a bit more concise. So think back to the managers, mentors, bosses who made kind of the biggest difference in your career, the most memorable ones. What were they good at?
Oh, is this like an interactive? We have
You just coughed at the right time. And that's all right. You're all thinking about it now, right? Have you got someone in your mind? Were they good at telling you what you were doing well and what you could be doing better? And did some of the criticism sting? And were some of the conversations perhaps a bit awkward, a little bit uncomfortable? My most memorable mentors or team leads were the ones that gave me pretty gut-wrenching feedback. The kind of criticism that stings to the point where I was pretty much in tears. And the reason is that the more feeling of discomfort, the bigger the opportunity for growth. And they told me things usually that I knew already. Julie and I have chatted lots while we were but they told me things I knew already, but I was too afraid to say out loud and acknowledge. Things like, your technical skills are not quite where you want them to be. Probably because you keep getting distracted by non-technical shiny things. Maybe you should try doing those less. Another one is, you ummed a lot in your talk. Perhaps you needed to practice a little bit more. And the way that you wrote that section of code is really messy. Let's go through it and see how you got there so that we can not do that again. Stuff like that. So as a manager or a team lead, and sometimes a mentor, mainly management or a boss, it is your responsibility to give feedback to the people that you work with and your team. And the reason is feedback is the most effective way to help people achieve success. But giving and receiving effective feedback is incredibly difficult, even for the most experienced managers. Who feels the same? No? Yeah? Sorry, that was an awkward question to ask. All right.
So that happened.
So this is an example of how one of our earlier one-on-ones went, Damian and mine. If you've ever been in a meeting with me, there's usually a really long agenda that I've attached to the meeting. And the first thing on the list was feedback for Larene. That was fine. The second thing on the list was feedback for Damian. And I didn't realise until the meeting that Damian spent all the time leading up to that meeting really, really nervous of what I was going to tell him. And he'd wondering what he'd done wrong. But it turns out for that particular one-on-one, I only had good feedback for Damian about something that he did well. And then he explained that he was feeling nervous to me, and we unpacked that together. And we realised that the phrase, "I have feedback for you,"
was attached to a very big stick.
up until that point. So why is feedback so hard? Let's break it down into the two basic components, praise and criticism. So praise is giving feedback on what someone should do more of, but it can easily feel patronising, right? Condescending. And criticism is giving feedback on something that someone could do better on, but it can very, very easily feel mean and not nice. So I wanted to give a few tips. The reason why I love talking about feedback is because ThoughtWorks does have, they still exist, does have an amazing feedback culture, and Sammy and I actually have given training before, each individually and together, when we work together, about feedback. It's something that we're really, really passionate about. And so, and we recognise that it's hard, and being able to talk about it, I think, is really, really important. So effective praise. So I've got two lists here that kind of represent the do's and don'ts, sort of. These are not hard and fast rules at all. It's just a bunch of different things to think about and consider when you are giving feedback. So the first one on the top in terms of praise is really, really important. Giving generic praise. This is something that happens a lot. Over my career, I've heard, Larene, you're doing an awesome job. Keep doing what you're doing. And that made me so angry. Because I had no idea what I should keep doing. Everything? No idea. It's very, very hard to act on that feedback. So please, please be specific when you're giving praise. And be specific about the behaviours and the actions, and not the people. Not, Larene, you're awesome. Or you can say that. But, Larene, that thing you did was really good because it, I don't know, helped fix this problem. And you should keep doing that in future stuff. That kind of thing. I'm really bad coming up with examples right now. And making sure that you pay attention and praise often. And however, a lot of people seem to have heard before to do kind of, it's not called the shit sandwich when you say it the nice way, but it's become good practice to wrap criticism in praise to kind of soften the blow a little bit. But what it actually does, and it's really dangerous, is it completely undermines the praise that you're giving, because people will generally remember when they come away from that feedback session the criticism that you gave and forget about the good thing that they did. So try not to wrap praise and criticism together, give them separately. Praising someone to be nice. When you're a manager or you're mentoring someone or you're a team lead, you kind of, you want to, especially a new one, you want to build rapport and you want to build relationships with your team. Giving praise to be nice is kind of the wrong idea of what you're trying to achieve with praise. You want to give praise to help them be more effective, to help them keep doing the things that are helping the team and themselves achieve success. And yeah, so praising someone so they keep doing the awesome thing rather than just trying to find something nice to say so you can be better friends. And waiting to give praise during a one-on-one, it's too late. As much as possible, try and give praise unexpectedly, because it makes people feel good that you're paying attention to what they're doing, and it's also good to have fast feedback so that they know when they've done the right thing or a good thing. And praising privately is great, but praising openly in front of other people or even behind their backs is amazing for their personal branding and for helping them connect them to people who know, oh, this person's good at that. Let's go talk to them next time we come up with that problem. So that's about praise. Effective criticism. So criticism is hard. So how do we make sure that we give it so that we can help the person but avoid feeling mean and make it easier to give? So do less of criticizing the person. Again, this is the same as giving praise. Don't give vague feedback here. Give specific criticism of behaviors and actions. When you did that thing, this happened, and probably we should have done this another way. Let's talk about how we can do better next time. Not, why did you do that thing? You're really dumb. It's been said before, I've heard it. Blaming and telling someone they are wrong. This sounds really harsh, but it does happen accidentally. And it's, for example, conversations like, you know, why did you do that way? Now we're stuck in this mess. What are we going to do now? That's really hurtful and not productive. And that kind of aligns with assuming positive intent, which is so important. Assuming the person was doing the best that they knew and the scenario they were in at the time. Because they probably were. Criticizing everything. So you might be wanting to help someone by telling them all the things they could be doing better, but when someone's new, they could be doing better at a lot of things. And so it could be quite overwhelming to keep giving criticism, keep getting feedback on every little single thing that they could be doing better. That's probably an indication that it's time to have a sit down with that person and maybe chat about a few things on how they're working, and maybe put in some strategies to help train them up to be able to do all the things that they can do for their job. Criticism is a positive opportunity. So that is, a lot of people associate criticism with a negative thing, like they've done a bad thing, but no, it's an opportunity for growth at the end of the day. And when you are giving criticism to a person, you are having their best intentions at heart, and you genuinely want them to improve and do better. It's not that they're doing bad, it's just that they can always learn and improve and grow more. No one's perfect. Saying you always is, again, kind of linking back to criticizing the person. Like, oh, why do you always talk or interrupt during a meeting? That kind of thing. Pick out specific behaviours and focus on that and examples. Don't kind of give them a cloud of, oh, you always do this is a part of your being. Calling people out and criticising publicly. Please try not to do that. Don't criticise to make an example of a person to the rest of the team. It's super important to ask permission if someone's ready to receive critical feedback, and do it privately. Take them out for a coffee, go for a walk, and also check that they're okay. Ask them how they are. Maybe they're having a bad time and that's why they're acting up. Cool. So this is kind of a summary of giving and receiving feedback. Boiling it down to some core principles. So seek to understand. So when you're giving feedback, seek to understand and assume positive intent. Assume that they're not trying to act up on purpose. And also understand the reasons behind why they might be doing particular things. Make sure that they're okay. You genuinely care about your team and this person. Pay attention. So giving feedback, pay attention to the things that they're doing so that you can give praise and give critical feedback and do it quickly. Fast feedback cycles are the best way to help people improve faster and be more effective and be more confident. Be specific. Always have examples as much as you can. And we can't have it all the time, but be specific, because that is the easiest thing to act on when you're trying to do something better or you want to keep doing something well. And do it often, and genuinely care about the person. You are giving feedback to help this person succeed, not to make yourself feel better, not to other bad things. And receiving feedback, knowing how to receive feedback effectively is actually quite difficult, if not just as hard as giving feedback. So as a manager, in order to kind of build this safe, trusting feedback culture in your team and your company, it's a really great idea to ask for feedback first and set that example for your reports and your peers. And because you are their boss, they might be terrified to give you feedback and say things that you might be able to do better. So I've supplied a link to a website called Radical Candor, which has a bunch of awesome questions to help you get that specific feedback. Like, what is one thing I could be doing to help you do your job better, or something like that. Again, do it often, try and get it as much as you can. Listen to understand, don't listen to respond, and definitely don't listen to defend. And say thank you, because someone's probably worked up a lot of courage to give you feedback, especially critical feedback. And make sure that you demonstrate that you're going to act on it. Show that you've listened and show that you want to improve. And yeah, that's about it for that one. I'll make it safe to always, receive feedback. Okay, where it goes wrong. Yeah, maybe I should clear. Thank you. Alright, so where it can go wrong. So who's heard of imposter syndrome? Should I ask who suffers of this? So yeah, I've kind of, thought a lot about imposter syndrome, and whether or not I have it, I'm not sure. I'm pretty arrogant. But I realised that when I felt I didn't belong, when I felt I wasn't doing a good job, it was because I didn't have enough feedback. I didn't have someone telling me that I was there and I was doing the right thing and I was okay. And it's very, very easy to fall into kind of that situation because giving feedback is hard. And so if it is hard, it might be less likely to happen. And then you kind of are in your own head in terms of, do I belong here? Have I tricked my employer to thinking that I should be here, but I actually am not meant to be here? I'm not actually good at my job. So that's why feedback is super, super important to really build confidence and establish that, yes, you are meant to be here, and trust that the team and the company have done the right job in hiring you. And then also, if there are things that you're supposed to be working on or could do better, feedback is super, super helpful for that. So the result of not having enough feedback is a lack of confidence and feeling like you don't belong. And ultimately, a lot of people do end up firing themselves and quitting because they feel like they're not meeting the standards of expected because they're not hearing that they are. So, action, give more feedback and prioritize one-on-ones. They are hard, but they are important. And Damian will touch on one-on-ones a little bit later. Benevolent sexism. Sammy can talk so much better about this than I can, but I'll give it a crack. So, who's heard of benevolent sexism before? A few people? Okay. This is a relatively new term for me as well. So women are statistically less likely to receive difficult feedback. This is a fact. This is a study done by McKinsey and Company. And the reason with that, I'll show you in a little infographic, I have it in a bit. But the result is slower career growth, self-evaluation, like knowing where you're at compared to other people is super, super difficult, and even the symptoms of imposter syndrome. And so an action is, as Damian touched on before, being aware of your unconscious biases and work through the discomfort, because unconsciously, through stereotypes in society, people do fear to, generally more likely to fear giving feedback, difficult feedback to women. And the reason for that, can I use the thing?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh no, it's on that screen.
Yeah, there you
Whoa. So, in a study that McKinsey and Company did, and they constantly do this study every year on, I think it's called Women at Work, and it's a little study called Lean In. Most managers report that they do not hesitate to give equal amounts of feedback to men and women. However, much less women report that they receive difficult feedback as opposed to men. I should stop doing that, that's really quite distracting. But the interesting things about this is, and though it's not directly related but correlated, is the reason why managers hesitate to give feedback to men over women. The other way around. And the one thing is concern about seeming mean, and that's why giving critical feedback, it is easy to feel like you're going to be mean. And so it's more likely when you are giving feedback to women that you might feel mean, and so you are reluctant to give it as compared to men, statistically. And the one on the bottom is also interesting, being concerned about emotional breakdown. There is findings, research to show that men and women are less likely to give women feedback because they're scared that they're going to cry. That has been shown. So Sammy's talked about that a lot in her talks about diversity and inclusion. And yeah, so this is just, it's a fact, it's something to be conscious of, and and if we are conscious and mindful and deliberate, we can avoid having these problems, I think. We'll try anyway.
All right, we'll talk a little bit about one-on-ones. So, effective one-on-ones, just a couple of tips. I think we have points here. Schedule them regularly and commit to them. Stuff does happen, but try not to shift people's one-on-ones all the time and not do them. So schedule them and make sure they happen. The mentee sets the agenda. It's their time, essentially. Yes, there should be some space in that agenda if you as a manager or a mentor has some feedback, but push that to the mentee saying, this is my time and this is what I want from them. Some stuff to talk about. Career goals, ambitions. The stuff I talked about before, like where do you want to go next? Let's push you towards there. Have that difficult feedback. get a bit awkward in a professional way. It shouldn't just be you should sort of bring something to that and actually both open yourself up a little bit. And if it's a little bit awkward while remaining professional, that's probably a good conversation where you build trust. So bringing some awkward stuff into that conversation will help you build that trust and build that openness. But again, make it safe. There should be no punishment for bringing in awkward stuff or saying, hey, I'm really struggling with this. That shouldn't be something that leads to a terrible repercussion or punishment. And obviously the one-on-ones are two-way. There is that feedback, both ways. Both of you can learn from it. Set actions in those one-on-ones. Like by the time we meet again, these are the things that you should have done, and then make some time to check in on how it went and what the results were, and sort of report back. This is an interesting technique. Who's heard of README files? Like in software, yeah? So who's heard of a manager README? A few people. So there's a sort of concept that kicked off, was kicking around a year or two ago, and some people love them and some people hate them, but it was a lot of in a lot of these sort of more progressive companies, managers would actually put together a README, which again, sort of tech focused, but this is how I work. This is how to work with me. And we found that last year, having people write that as sort of part of their induction activities. This is how I work, these are my likes and dislikes, this is my style, this is the thing that's going to make me shut down, this is how I want to be treated, and housekeeping things like this is my preferred contact method and stuff like that. But actually having people, when they came on board, write their own README, and then as part of that first one-on-one, compare READMEs and talk about it. And it's a really good way to understand how to make your communication styles work together, because we all have different ways that we like to communicate and different ways that we do communicate, and most people operate under the assumption that everybody works like them, which is not true. So actually writing down, here's how I work and what I like to work, and the things that kind of irritate me and the things that make me over, and actually having that conversation, you realise, it helps to realise how best to work with that person. It really kind of gets you off into a good place. So yeah, the sort of trend, and if you sort of Google manager README, there's a bunch of stuff written about it, and it was about managers, new people on the team, this is how I work as a manager. But we found it a really interesting thing to do the other way, and also just within the team. Everyone in our team had a README that says, hey, look, here's how I like to work. So a super effective tool, and one to, again, it's not for everyone, some people hate them, but if you are building a team and trying to build a new culture, really helpful tool to look at.
Oh, this is my slide. I like reading. So if there was a lot of concepts that we shared in there, they're actually covered in these two books which talk about leadership, and both of them have changed my life quite a lot. Dare to Lead was a really, really good replacement for a therapist. But they cover a lot of the points in really good depth and with a lot of different tools and actions you can actually apply if you were interested in looking more into that. So setting boundaries is a big one that I learned. And both of them talk about assuming positive intent. And assuming positive intent, I was surprised, is actually not easy. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And so when Sammy and I gave feedback training, and we said, yes, assume a positive intent, but if you actually sit down and come to it, do you actually assume that that person's trying their best when they're doing a bad thing? So, what?
Just assume they're stupid.
Just assume they're stupid. Stuff like that.
That's quite the opposite.
So there's techniques around not doing that in there. And radical candor, being clear and kind with feedback. Kim Scott's worked at Google and Apple and brought a lot of amazing transparency and communication culture to every team that she led. So, and Brene Brown's on Netflix, you can just put it on. So, highly recommend.
Because reading's hard.
Reading is hard. I listened to both these books. Yeah, so that's the little thing that I wanted to share. What else do we got?
All right, so we're going to get into some questions in a minute if we've got it. But before we do that, we both have a couple of things that we want to plug. because we're up here. First one is for anyone that cycles, that does road cycling in Brisbane. We run a monthly tech industry bunch ride.
Oh my god.
If you want to get up and meet us at 5:30 tomorrow morning in South Bank, that's where we'll be.
Handy.
Sorry?
I'll be awake at 5:30, but not at 7.
Another one is in May. I am running a half-day workshop on test-driven development essentials. So,
This is so big.
so yeah, if you are interested in test-driven development and learning more, or know a team or whatever, please come talk to me about that. I would love to sell more tickets.
And I have 2 events that I want to shamelessly plug. So May 16 is Global Accessibility.
Hey, that guy?
Julian, you're on the screen. Global Accessibility Awareness Day, raising awareness around how inaccessible the web is right now and what we can do to do better. It's a really, really great night. There's free food. It's going to be at Expedia. I'm really excited about that. And yeah, a bunch of awesome talks lined up, including Julian. So please, please do come along.
Next
Good
one.
night. Next one. I'm teaming up with Bex. You might know her. She's worked at a startup that specialising in machine learning and screening prostate cancer, and they've expanded to a bunch of other medical stuff now, called Maxwell. She started there. She's now gone and trotted the globe and explored machine learning AI, published a bunch of stuff, mentored it at accelerators and things, and together we're going to launch Women in AI in Brisbane. So please, everyone's welcome, not just women, everyone's welcome to come along. Please do join us. There's going to be food.
And AI.
And AI.
And women.
Let's not plug ourselves. And we do need help with sponsorship if your company does want to sponsor. We have big plans. So yeah, please come along and see if you're interested in helping us out. Cool.
With that, that is the end of our talk. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or some feedback? Lucy.
Do you have to train the mentee to be a good mentee when you start, especially junior entry?
Probably yes. Yeah, but I think you would just as a mentor, you would just have a more driving hand in what that process looks like. So yeah, I guess I don't think I've ever done it deliberately, but yeah, I guess you do. It's just part of running just facilitating the process.
In some cases, the mentee trains the mentor.
Sometimes that's Is that a thing? Reverse mentorship?
Yes, exactly.
Reverse
It's intergenerational as well. Younger people mentor older people and older people mentor. And across the functions in the structure of the company as well.
Yeah.
So they really get connected vertical and horizontal as well.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great.
On that, what did you learn from Larene?
Surely that would be a long list.
I learned lots of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about feedback and opening myself up to it and giving it better, definitely. I learned a whole bunch about front-end dev from both Larene and Jamie, because I'm terrible at it. Put me on the spot now. Probably a bunch more, but there are a couple off the top of my head.
You did good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want to ask you.
Yeah.
You mentioned setting goals and expectations. So what kind of things have you asked for mentorship on before? Like, do you ask for, like, I want to build this thing, so I want mentoring? Or is this what have you been asked?
Good question. So the example with Damian and I was, I wanted to be a full stack developer. And so we worked on picking up things in terms of back-end stuff that I knew how to do, but I was less comfortable with. Previous mentors, a lot of stuff around consulting skills. So having a mentor when I was a consultant with ThoughtWorks, having a mentor on my client and asking them to kind of give me feedback and give me opportunities to stretch in terms of, for example, leading a workshop around, what was it, making a tech decision. It was actually around Swagger. And trying to influence the client to, or facilitate the client to make a decision around that. It's pretty scary.
So was that mentor with you on the team in those negotiations, or did you, during those catch-ups?
Yeah, as much as possible. We would catch up and I would get advice when we kind of moved to different cities, but when we were together on a client, they would as much as possible sit there with me in that meeting, because they were usually in the same team, and then we discuss afterwards and be deliberate about, okay, what did I do well, what could I have done better, because he knew that we were going to have that discussion afterwards, so he paid attention.
So generally most of your mentors are people you already work with currently at the time?
Yeah, I haven't been so deliberate and going out and searching for a mentor and like stalking people on the internet and stuff. I was really lazy, so I kind of just attached to the closest person to me and said, hey. I didn't even ask them to be my mentor. I kind of just kept asking them for questions and feedback, and it turned out that way. So
great, thank you.
Just on that then, do you have any recommendations on where you can find potential mentors and mentees if they're not in your current organisation?
they're not in your current organisation. That
Cyber
is a good
Century Mentoring. It's an organisation that Christine CTO is setting up here in Brisbane.
Oh, awesome.
Connect mentors with mentoring. It's called Cyber Century Mentoring.
Cyber Century Mentoring.
Century,
Awesome. Thank you.
SENTRY.
Century.
Century.
Like 100?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, words.
There's a question right at the back.
Oh yeah, I was just going to ask, when shouldn't someone be a mentor? So you sort of said at the start how it's good, becoming a mentor is really good for you as your own personal development as well, but when shouldn't someone?
Probably if you know that you can't commit to it fully. So, if you say yes to everything, this is the saying no thing. If you just say yes to everything that comes in, you're going to get overwhelmed, and eventually, I know I do this. I know Larene does it. We'll say yes to a whole bunch of stuff, and then you're just like, no, I can't do any of this, and you're going to drop a bunch of balls and upset people. So, if you don't think that you can give it the amount of time, or have the conversation around what your expectations are, look, I can't give you that amount of time. Be really upfront about that early. Also, sit down and talk about what people want out of that, and if the skill that they're after or the sort of advice they're after, whatever, is not really something that you can do well, then maybe say, hey, look, you're probably better off with somebody else. And again, make that introduction if you can. So yeah, if you don't think that you can do a good job, that's a great place to say no. That would probably be my first thing. If you don't like them, maybe.
Can I make a plug?
Yes.
The Tech Girls movement is looking for coaches for a competition that's the next Tech Girls superhero.
Yes.
Which
Who knows
is
Janine?
Yes.
So if there's anybody that wants a supported, low commitment kind of coaching opportunity, then that might be a good starter to get into being a mentor.
Yeah, my team dropped out last year. No, it's really, really good. It's a lot of fun. It's usually over remote, but if you get a school nearby, then you can hang out with them.
How do you deal with the disparity in confidence where, say, as the mentor, you're confident that the mentee can do the job and they're not and won't do it, or the other way where they're confident they can rush off and do something, you're sitting there going, wait, hold up.
So, there's a couple of things that I think we covered through there. One is you do need to allow people to fail and learn some of those things. So if you, as a mentor, if somebody's like, yeah, I'm going to do this, you go, okay, cool. Come back to me tomorrow with how that's going for you. So not just, yep, cool, take 4 weeks, knock yourself out. If you know that they're overconfident, then put a time box on it. You go, let's check in at this point and see how you're going, and then have a conversation about it. So yeah, putting time frames on it would be the first one. Secondly, particularly if it's if you're working on a team where that task, like the business depends on it. It's not just, hey, look, do this in your spare time. But if you think they're going to fail, then you probably want to start with some smaller things. So go do this, come back to me, in a couple of hours or at the end of the day or tomorrow, and then as that trust builds, you can, reach it out, sort of extend that out. Say, yep, cool, you're fine with that feature. It's going to take you 2 weeks. Let me know how you went. But that's sort of over time as you build that trust up. So it starts small time frames and check-ins, and then the feedback. So if you've been doing this with somebody for 6 months and they're still completely overconfident and they're going to go away and just go completely wild and make a massive mistake, then you're probably not giving them the right feedback. So all the things we just talked about. Yeah.
I think a big underrated one is showing that vulnerability as well. So making it safe for the person to ask for help when they get stuck. That's something. It's definitely something I've struggled with. I'm very bad at asking for help still, but I'm getting better. But having that safe environment to be like, no one knows what they're doing. Yeah. Actually, so.
Yeah. So as a mentor, you can say, hey, look, and it could be, look, go do this task. Yeah, I've got this. Look, can we check in 2 days? Because I know every time I have to touch whatever, I completely suck at it and I flail it and I get it wrong 4 times before I figure it out. So let's check in 2 days. So again, that's that vulnerability. Say, look, it's okay to stuff this up because we all do. So, use that to then have more check-in points to give that feedback.
Damian mentioned you had some more to say on man and mentoring women. Is there any other points that were?
It's more around the benevolent sexism. So, men kind of go, yeah, I want to mentor because, they want to sort of feel pretty good about it. It's a good thing to do, and it is. But then are afraid to actually give anything really actionable. So you just become a cheerleader. And, there are times where a little bit of cheerleading is okay, but it's not where people are going to get the best growth.
Yeah, so I guess I can talk a little bit about my experience. A big one was that I was told a lot that, hey, you're awesome, you're doing a good job. And I found that I wasn't receiving, even though I was begging for it, I wasn't receiving that much critical feedback that I could actually action. And so I did get to a point where it had been a while and I hadn't improved on the things that I wanted to improve on, my technical skills, still. And so I believe it's because of that kind of unconscious bias that you are afraid to give critical feedback for fear of feeling mean or hurting the person or having them cry. Yep, Dana?
Because if they cry, then you think you have to fix it. And you can't.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just let them work through that it's uncomfortable and they're disappointed probably in themselves, and that's okay. So a big part of it is learning to be okay with somebody being uncomfortable in front of you.
Yeah, definitely.
You can't fix it.
You can't fix it. That's
We want to fix all the things.
This doesn't make them good happy.
So stops the mascara from running. I know that.
A tip for that I think came from Rhoda Campbell. She wrote about not keeping tissues in her office when she was having difficult conversations, and then it gave her the chance to have the break of, I'll go get you some Kleenex, and gave them a way to diffuse the situation.
And would you like some water and stuff like that? I don't think it happens that often, but yeah. They're not laughing about that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah?
It was actually the one I was going to ask about. If you know that you've got someone who does get emotional when you get feedback, how do you give them feedback? What is the best way to deal with that? If you know every other time you've given them feedback, something like that's happened and it's been quite awkward for everyone involved, how do you keep giving them feedback? Is there something you can do to make them feel more comfortable?
I don't think I've ever made anyone cry during feedback session.
And really nice, I promise.
Yeah, no. It's a really, really good question.
Do it more. No, I'm actually serious. If it's awkward, do it more, and because a lot of the time people cry is because so much anticipation is built up to that moment. They've brought so much anxiety into that conversation. You give that feedback, and then people just let go. Over time, it's look, we're going into another one-on-one. I'm going to cry, whatever, and it sort of takes some of the sting out of it. Maybe?
Maybe.
Give it a try. Come back to us, let me know how that works. 3 weeks.
Yeah. Do you feel comfortable talking to them about them getting emotional?
We usually just avoid talking about the fact that that's going on and just keep the conversation going.
I would try that maybe. Could work. Let us
It's
know.
better than being like, are you okay? Like, do we need to do something? Kind of.
But that's the thing, you don't need to fix it. You can acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You don't need to fix it. It's there, there's no judgment.
Then I just get the thing where I feel like I'm going to start crying because they're crying.
Maybe add some alcohol to it. No, it's
What's going on?
Yeah, no, I would acknowledge it, without judgment and just kind of normalize it and let some of that anxiety go.
Crying's not the only emotion though. Like,
No.
it's not like crying like it is something really bad and the only emotion. Like, a lot of people react with anger. So maybe we just need to treat the emotional reaction to feedback as a whole and not just crying that makes people most uncomfortable. And maybe it's some sort of checking process like how are you feeling, do you need time, or something that you've got all range of emotions.
That's a great one.
I think people are also like slightly more receptive if they've actually asked for it themselves, asked for the feedback.
Yeah, one thing that is probably important is to kind of, if you do want to have that open feedback culture, you do need to be deliberate about introducing it to the company and the team and stuff first and talking about it and have everyone's buy-in, because it's not everyone's cup of tea. And especially something that's new to a lot of people that's less natural is not getting defensive and listening and saying thank you, and because that's like we've always had to kind of defend our honor before, and also kind of hide away what we're weak at and what we're not so good at to look really strong and confident, because that's kind of how society's brought us up. So having that kind of open trust and vulnerability and bravery is actually quite new.
And that's where something like the README can help, is you can use that as a conversation starter. Hey, look, we want to bring this in, and we're going to talk about here's what the structure is going to be like, and here's me on a table. So you kind of, open yourself up and go, here's how I work, take that as a template, and, bring that back, and then we can have a conversation about how best to talk together.
Okay, well, please join me in thanking Damian and Larene.